The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." Jesus asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Christ." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. And then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are thinking not as God does, but as humans do." Jesus called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "Whoever wants to become my follower, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it." The gospel of the Lord. Bishop Briesbeck is unable to be here this weekend as he had hoped because one of our pastors, Father Paul LeBlanc, pastor of Our Lady of Hope Parish and Notre Dame de l'Espérance Parish in the Miramichi, died last Sunday morning unexpectedly. And so the bishop this weekend is with his parishioners in their 2 different churches. Today in our first reading, we find words that appear in some of the stained glass of this church. If you go out through this door, which all of you have done now a fair number of times, and you look up over the door, you find 2 coats of arms. One of them is the coat of arms of St. Pius X, that he chose when he became bishop and modified when he became pope. The other is the coat of arms of Bishop Arthur Gilbert, who was the founding pastor of St. Pius X Parish and the pastor when this present church was built. And as part of his coat of arms, you read the Latin words, "Aperui mihi orem," the Lord, or he has opened my ears. And this is coming from this passage of the book of Isaiah. And this passage is one of 4 passages that we find in the middle section of the book of Isaiah that are beautiful hymns that speak of a suffering servant of God's and that are embedded in the middle section of the book of Isaiah. And although they can be understood different ways, one of the classical understandings is messianic. They helped us to interpret the expectations and the coming of the Messiah. Our second reading today is again from the letter of St. James, who likes to call things as he sees them. And here he gets into what in centuries later would become a classic theological discussion, the distinction between faith and works. So much so that when Martin Luther produced his first German translation of the Scriptures, omitting some 7 books of the Old Testament, he also attempted to omit this book, and several others as well. It didn't fly even among the reformers, but he just did not like what St. James had to say here. And so again he says, there are some who say, well, faith will save me. And he'll say, so what are you doing about it? If you encounter somebody who's without clothing and hungry, and you say, go in peace, keep warm, keep well fed, have a good life, and you do nothing to feed them or clothe them, well, what's the good of that? That's faith without works, and it's dead, he says. And someone will say to St. James, well, you have faith, I have works. I will say, then show me your faith apart from your works, and I, by my works, will show you my faith. And finally, in the Gospel, we have the first of 3 episodes in Mark's Gospel, picked up by Matthew and Luke, where Jesus makes a prediction of his upcoming passion and death. And each time he does it, he gets more specific in the prediction. And each time he does it, one or other or even all of his disciples show they don't understand what Jesus is saying. And each time Jesus then has to correct them. In this case, it is Simon Peter himself, the first called of the apostles of Jesus, the one who would become the leader of the community after Jesus' death, the very one who speaks so confidently, you are the Christ, the Son of God. And then here he is now when Jesus predicts his passion. He takes him aside and says, don't talk so crazy. That's basically what Peter was saying to Jesus. Don't talk so foolishly. And Jesus says to him, get behind me, Satan. You're thinking not as God thinks, but as people thinks. And then he gathers all of them who are there together. If you want to become my follower, you must deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. And whoever loses their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it.